after last year, there were a lot of people that are still on the team from last year that witnessed all of that have a bad taste in their mouth.
Do you actually enjoy watching this game?
Yeah.
And the answer is no. But I think when the crowd gets loud and adversity comes, I think some of the old ghosts start to show up for Ryan Day. Michigan's not going to win a shootout against them. I think Michigan is able to do offensively and defensively just enough.
I think it's time.
It's time for the game, boy.
I think it's time. And it started for me roughly around 3:45 on Saturday when Ohio State was wrapping up. And then I turned my attention immediately to that team up north. This game, we already talked about it before we even really started diving into the recaps, means everything. I don't really care what else happens this season. I do care a lot about what happens, but I don't really care outside of what happens this week.
And that's what I want. That's really what I want to know, because I know your answer to this. But here's my request for this year after what happened last year. I'd like to know from Ohio State fans now. Does this game matter to you or does it not?
It's always mattered, and you knew my answer to that.
And I know it does for you, because like for Ohio State fans as a whole, the game mattered a lot when you were winning it. And then all of a sudden, when you couldn't buy a win against Michigan now the game doesn't really matter, and it erases the loss to Michigan, and well, our season's not over. And I just want to know, like, does it matter before the game happens? Because it does. You tell me it does. You tell me it does by your actions, by your songs, by your crossing out the M's, by your focus, by your refusal to say the name. Whether you want to admit it or not, last year's loss mattered.
Well,
every single time you play this game matters, or you can stop calling yourself a fan.
100%. I shared this story last season on the podcast where I was at the game, and it was after we lost, and I'm walking out of the stadium, and I mean, I'm hot. That was the worst Saturday maybe of my entire life.
God bless it.
And I'm so angry. I'm not thinking anything about playoffs. That is the farthest thing from my mind. We are literally outside of the stadium, 10, 15 minutes removed from watching what just happened. And there's a group of Buckeye fans in front of me, and there's some Michigan fans all walking to their cars. And the Michigan fans are obviously ecstatic. They're getting in people's faces, honestly being kind of annoying.
Yeah.
They earned it. So whatever. They weren't being disrespectful.
Also, don't be that person.
Well, they weren't being disrespectful.
Okay.
They were just like playfully talking trash. And then there were Ohio State fans that maybe had a little bit too much silly juice, and they just
this is from a ministry, so I guess we can do that.
They just fit into it. They had water, if you know what I mean.
They had water, but the Lord had been around.
The Lord
recently,
had been around,
and
so they chimed in and they were chirping back and forth. And one of the statements that I heard from this Ohio State fan base was, "Well, your season's over. Ours is just beginning. We're going to the playoffs." And it immediately was like, "No, that's not how this works. We just lost to them. I don't care if we go to the playoffs. I don't care. I care, but in that moment, do not care at all." But that was the mentality, even on the field. I mean, you saw it with Jack Sawyer.
I mean, that's exactly almost verbatim what he said was, your season's over. It's like, that is, and then to afterwards, later on, be like, didn't really matter. You know, the game has changed in playoff system. And I was like, well, your little temper tantrum showed me that it does matter.
100%.
Because guess what? Jack has no gold pants, and nothing he can do can change that.
No, and I think it's weird because I really do think the fan base now is not split evenly. I think it's roughly probably 75-25, 75% still know that this game means everything, but it's the loudest part seems to be that 25% now, where they're looking at this and going, well, I mean, I even heard it after this game where they were like, well, if we lose to Michigan this week, we have one loss. Like, that might actually be better for playoff rankings because then you don't have to. And
that's just insane.
Do not talk football with me if that is your mindset. We have nothing in common. We don't watch the same game.
Because guess what? If you win the game, I'll bet you dollars to donuts that game suddenly means something again.
Oh, and I'm looking at it even from a bigger perspective, and I feel very strongly that's how the team inside that locker room is.
I would agree with that.
They're looking at this and they're going, after last year, there were a lot of people that are still on the team from last year that witnessed all of that have a bad taste in their mouth. I think Ryan Day has a different attitude coming into this game now. I think you've seen that switch get flipped a little bit. But I think they're going to have the energy. But I think when you look at them, and if you've ever been in a competitive sport at all, you should feel this way. They're looking at that game and going, they're the ones that are stopping us from getting our first trophy. None of us have a Big Ten championship. That is our first ultimate goal, beat Michigan.
Yeah, gold pants.
1A or 1B of that is win the Big Ten championship. Then you're wanting the natty.
Yep. The goal is all three. The goal is always all three.
Michigan is stopping you from getting 2 of those 3 done. Because if they lose, Ohio State's not going to the Big Ten championship.
Yeah. Michigan has shut down at least 2 of those 3 goals for 4 years now.
Yeah. And I think that locker room is going to be ready and prepared for that. And I also think, and this is just maybe me personally, I want to be the team that kind of goes and shuts Indiana up. And we don't have to dive into that, obviously, but you've seen Indiana going in there and obviously going to most likely finish with an undefeated season. I think they play Purdue this weekend.
Yep. By the way, Friday night football games. We'll get to college football pick 'em later. Don't forget that there are phenomenal games at each day part on Friday. Cancel all your plans.
And so I'm looking at this game, and I think this is the season where you really start to see the focus get back. I think years past, you've seen Ryan Day get in his own head. I shared the story earlier about him on the sideline. You even heard stories. There were obviously videos that came out after the championship season where they had the players and him only meeting. And he said players asked him the hard questions. And there was a book that came out. I forget the guy's name, but it kind of detailed all that. And he had interviewed specific players. And the players literally after that game expressed frustration with him and said, like, dude, what is going on? You're not setting us up. What is, like, the game plan wasn't working and you refused to adapt, and made him hold himself accountable. And I think that switched gears in his mind. I think you've seen a different Ryan Day. I think even last year, you saw games, I would say Nebraska was one of those, where they underperformed and the level of focus just wasn't there.
They were very lucky to beat Nebraska last week.
100%.
And it was not a good Nebraska team either.
No. And so I'm looking at this year's team, and I think the focus is there. I think the desire is there. My biggest question mark for this
let's dive into it.
Is the health. I think there's obviously other things as well. But last week, you don't see Jeremiah Smith. You don't see Carnell Tate.
Yeah.
Do either of them play? Do one of them play?
You know what my gut says? My gut says that they are both going to play, but I don't believe that Carnell Tate's fully healthy. Now, obviously you could say, well, yeah, of course not, because they held him up. But, like, hear me. I think Jeremiah Smith is going to be at 90%. I feel like Carnell Tate might be at like 60%. I think they may both play, but I think Carnell Tate may not be full health.
I disagree.
What do you think?
I think
that, by the way, this is not inside information.
Yeah.
This is purely me speculating.
That's
all that is.
The only thing that I will say is, having been at the game this past Saturday, hyper-focused watching them, it seemed like, and if you saw the UCLA game, you saw how bad of a limp Jeremiah seemed to have. Awful. He still had one, but it wasn't nearly as noticeable. So that makes me feel a little bit better. Yeah. Not 100%, but I feel more confident
he'll play.
I think Jeremiah Smith plays. I would almost say that's 100%.
Yeah.
Carnell Tate,
it's his birthday, for goodness sake.
Carnell Tate, I don't think plays
at all.
I don't, and I hate to say this. It feels eerily similar to the JSN situation from a couple seasons ago. This is a guy that, coming into the season, had a lot of high expectations. I think up until his injury, he was a clear first-round pick, and I still think people will probably select him in the first round. I don't think he is going to go out, and I think this is just kind of the new age of college football that we're in. I don't see him going, knowing that they're going to be able to make the playoffs regardless. I don't see him risking re-injury for that. I think he'll come back for playoffs. I think you see him sit this and just make sure he's 100% good to go, because the championship is still in grasp. But I just don't see him wanting to risk getting injured further if he's not 100%. And I don't believe he's 100%.
It'll be interesting to see what that looks like, because, again, you saw against a bad Rutgers defense, you saw the Ohio State offense, despite putting up that many points, the passing game was not the same, understandably so, was not the same rhythm as having your top guys in there.
I mean, it was still fine. Like it wasn't.
It was fine, but was that performance enough to beat Michigan? No, it wouldn't be.
Maybe.
And so let's actually get into it, and let's start on that side. So I mean, like that is the big matchup. One of the big matchups for Ohio State Michigan is going to be the Ohio State pass game. A lot of it does hinge, I think, on the health of Carnell Tate and Jeremiah Smith. On the Michigan side, I mentioned Jair Hill. I didn't think he played a great game against Maryland, but he has been fantastic this year. Far fewer mistakes than he had last year. I mean, Michigan has a good, not great pass defense. I think they're ranked like 47th or so. So I mean, they're above average, but they're probably an average pass defense. I have some concerns, understandably so, about Ohio State connecting on these deep shots. That's where Carnell Tate thrives. Jeremiah Smith can do whatever he wants, wherever, right?
Yeah.
But like that's where I think the loss of Carnell Tate becomes especially significant, is because he tends to be the most common deep ball guy. I'm not sure, just from some of the things I've seen overall, I'm just not sure Michigan can bend, don't break. But I think the big key is if you're giving up these 35, 40-yard passes, you can bend, you can bend, not break all you want. But if all of a sudden they just get it in one fell swoop, it's going to be real hard for Michigan to hang with them. I think positively for Michigan here, I mean, we've seen Michigan go up against, we've not seen anybody like Carnell Tate and Jeremiah Smith. Okay. Like outside of maybe, USC, we saw how that went, though actually it was more the ground game that caused issue than the passing game, if we're being honest. They're in a level by themselves, but I've seen really good things from Jair Hill against Denzel Boston, good receiver, against Nick Marsh, good receiver. And so I would also say that Michigan has a better secondary this year than we had last year. And last year, Michigan did a good job of shutting that pass game down. Ohio State's going to get their pound of flesh against them. It's just a matter of how much, and I think a lot of it hinges on, can you avoid the big chunk fell swoop plays? Because if they can keep it in front of them, I think that does tend to bode well for Michigan, but it's a big if.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest question mark is obviously the receiver room. I think it shouldn't be a difficult thing to analyze for these two teams. If you're a fan of either side, the game plan is the same as it has been all season. Ohio State's going to try to throw the ball. Michigan's going to try to run the ball. That's going to be it. Now, there are some concerns for Ohio State when you start looking at how a guy like Andrew Marsh has started to develop. I think at the beginning of the season, you didn't really have to account for any of the receivers, really. None of them have really shown out. He's going to be a problem. Yeah. You've got to watch for him now.
I was going to say, I got to be careful so I don't eat my words. But listen, this whole podcast, if you lose the game, you're going to eat everything you just 100%. Said. So if it's one-on-one coverage, I will take Andrew Marsh over Igbinosun 8 out of 10 times because I don't think he can keep up with him without grabbing him. I really don't. Mm-hmm. I think Michigan's emergence as a multi-dimensional team, because again, the run game is still going to be the bread and butter. Like, there's no question about that. Also, have you seen Ohio State's linebackers, and have you met a guy named Caleb Downs?
Mm-hmm. You will.
If you haven't, you about to.
You about to.
Think around and discover, if you will. Michigan's bread and butter is still going to be the run game for multiple reasons. But Michigan is not a one-dimensional team like I would even say they were earlier in the year.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
And certainly look at last year. Look at that team last year with a potato at quarterback, and Michigan still got it done. Why? Because, they were, despite being a very one-dimensional run-first team, you could stack the box because you knew. I think Michigan's emergence as a multi-dimensional team is going to force Ohio State's defense to be a little bit more honest in the way they play. I think Chip Lindsey, this is not me making a prediction, I'm just saying, I do think, regardless of outcome, I do predict that Chip Lindsey is going to continue calling games really well that forces defenses to stay honest. He's worked the screen game into Michigan's game plan to use the pass rush against teams. He's taken they don't take a lot of deep shots, but they've taken those intermediately long throws to Marsh. Obviously, the run game, they'll run stretch. They'll pound it up the middle. There's a lot of different things. And in fact, one of the things that Michigan has not done a ton yet, that I'm going to say right now, I think it's coming Saturday, is they have not called like these designed quarterback keepers a whole lot for Bryce. We saw one against Northwestern, fooled the cameraman and everybody except God, and Bryce Underwood scoots into the end zone. I actually really think, and I don't think it's going to be like running for 150 or 100 yards or anything like that, but we saw like 20 yards against Northwestern. We saw like 30 yards this past weekend. I think you're probably seeing that 50 to 75 yard rushing game from Bryce. I think if Michigan has their way, they're going to use his legs a lot more. That's not something that they've put on film a whole lot. When you do those things, it's not that any one of those things has to be outstanding even, but if you make defenses have to account for a bunch of different things, that's how you spread out a really good defense like Ohio State's.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting about this matchup is the thing that Ohio State does really well is also the thing Michigan does really well. You just harped on it. Michigan's bread and butter is running the ball. Yeah. They're like, 10th in the nation? They average like 235 a game.
That's where they want to win.
223. If they have success on the ground, rinse and repeat. I mean, that's just going to be what it is. Ohio State, though, on the defensive side of things, ranked second in the nation in run defense, first in every other statistical category. This defense is elite. They've played playmakers. They haven't just had a cupcake like people want to say. They've played some really good players. Jonah Coleman, one of them. Antoine Raymond from Rutgers was a 1,000-yard guy. They've had some guys that are good running backs, that are good running teams, and they've just locked them up. It hasn't mattered. I genuinely, my feel for this game is if you're expecting a shootout, Ohio State wins.
Oh, I don't think there's a person under God's blue sky that would disagree with you.
I think in order for Michigan to win this game, they've got to have it be an ugly slugfest like last year, where they've got to completely shut down any semblance of a run game for Ohio State.
I would agree with that. I don't think it has to be nearly as ugly as it was last year.
No, and I think,
but if you let Ohio, to your point, and I'll let you continue here, to your point, if you let Ohio State run the ball in addition to throwing the ball, it's just,
you're in trouble.
It's hard. And by the way, that goes the same way the other way too, where if you let Michigan pass the ball in addition to running the rock, you're in trouble. You've got to force the other team to be one-dimensional in some respect.
And I think the one thing that's really been a nice addition the past couple of weeks, and granted you take into account the competition, but Bo Jackson has been the running back one for weeks now. But these past 2 weeks, I think, have given you a lot of hope going into this game because you're not just going to pass every down. You've got to be able to run the ball at some point. You've got to be. I don't feel like it's the fact that people always want to revert back to. I think Ryan Day even said it last year, where he's like, the winner of the game has always been the one that wins the ground game. I don't think that has to be the case this year.
If that's going to be the case, then chalk up another L.
It can't be a vast difference. No, you can't.
You can't
be down like 200 something yards to Michigan and then you have 70. But if Michigan has 130, 140 rushing yards and you have like the 70 to 80, I think you can still win that.
Because the only stat that matters is the scoreboard.
Yeah,
that's literally yeah.
I think that's what makes the difference. I think that this is going to be a game where Michigan's going to be ready to go. Their defense is going to be up to pressuring Sayin. He's going to get a little uncomfortable. I don't think Carnell Tate plays. I think Jeremiah Smith does. I think this is one where you see Ohio State's offense get slowed down a little bit, but I don't think they get slowed down enough. I think the past 2 weeks have shown me that Bo Jackson has the ability to really break one off. He reminded me of Travion Henderson the past couple of weeks. I think for him, if he can get me 70 yards, 70, 75 yards on the ground, I feel pretty good about that.
If you're Brian Hartline and if you're Bo Jackson, where I think if I'm Ohio State, I don't think you're going to beat Michigan just straight up running the ball.
No.
And I should rephrase. I mean, correct, but I think beyond that, I don't think you're going to have success in the run game just straight up running the ball. Where I actually think that you can get Bo Jackson involved in some of these guys is they seem to have, now granted Rutgers is terrible at run defense, but they had success on the perimeter. And some of that was the run game via the halfback pass, or via throwing the ball out to your running back. That's where I could see Ohio State having some success because, yeah, it's a pass, but it's basically a run. I think that's where, whether it's a straight up throw, whether it's a pitch, I think because Michigan knows that they are going to likely have to, even if you can't get to Sayin, you nailed it. You've got to pressure him. Again, we saw with Malik Washington. Ohio State also doesn't give up a lot of sacks. Neither does Maryland. But even when they couldn't get home against Washington, he got a little bit antsy when he felt the pressure because he just hadn't faced that yet. Julian Sayin, as good as he is still a young quarterback. He has not faced a ton of pressure from defensive lines yet. So I think Michigan knows that they've got to affect him that way. The way to mitigate that, one of the ways to mitigate that, is to punish the pass rush against itself. Michigan's going to need to do this against Ohio State. Caden Curry, Kenyatta Jackson, they're going to try to get to Underwood. This offensive line is good, but they're still young. And so the way Michigan's going to try to mitigate is the same way if you're Ohio State, you should probably try to mitigate those quick dump off passes where you can use the pass rush against it, whether it's a straight up screen or just tossing the ball out to the running back. If you're Michigan, that's where you're going to have to be disciplined. You're going to have to do things like fundamentals, make a tackle, don't jump off sides. Things that Michigan has, the tackling has been much better after the USC game, but the offsides thing, still a problem. Those fundamental, when you get down to these like nearly intangible things, this is where things matter. Things like discipline. Neither Michigan nor Ohio State take a ton of penalties. Michigan talked about in the Michigan State game, play with emotion, don't be emotional. Going to be massive. If Brandon Hillman continues to rein himself in, that's great. If he just starts flying off the handle again and you're given free 15-yard penalties, I mean, that will lose you the game. You stand over a guy and flex on him. That'll lose you the game. Like so many things. You don't have to play perfectly, but you've got to play sound, fundamental football.
Yeah, you got to play with an edge, but still smart.
So I'm gonna ask you. Go ahead, and if you need to lead up to it, do so. Let's predict this game.
This is my prediction. If the circumstances I said happen, so Jeremiah Smith plays, Cardinal Tate does not play, this is what I think will happen. I think a lot of people probably still expect Ohio State. I think right now they're 9.5-point favorites.
It opened at 11.5. It's down to 9.
I don't think it hits that.
Okay.
I have Ohio State 27, Michigan 20. I think this is a game that is evenly contested the entire time. I think Ohio State runs efficiently. I don't think they do anything crazy. I think Bo Jackson gets the 65, 80-yard range. I think Julian probably throws for 230, 240, a couple of touchdowns. Bo Jackson probably adds one in. I think Bryce probably turns it over once. And it is what it is. It ain't going to be fun until the very end. That's the prediction I know I'm going to hit.
I think I've told this story on the podcast before, but my wife, who she knows football, she enjoys football, she doesn't watch it a ton, but this is like the game that she's like, I want to sit down and watch this game with you. And again, only her and my kids, those are the only people I'll watch this game with. But she's asked me, we've been married for 9 years now, and she's asked me in early years in our marriage, she would look at me and say, do you actually enjoy watching this game?
Yeah.
And the answer is no. And I said, no, I don't enjoy watching this game at all. I said, I enjoy it after the game and then only maybe. That's I don't know if you have the ability to just soak in and go, I'm just going to sit back and just enjoy this blue blood matchup. I have no idea how to talk to you about this game. That's fine. Good for you. I don't. I will pace. I'll put my Strava on and I'll just pace and probably do about 37 miles in this game. All right, so here I want to lead up to it because I kind of want to summarize my thoughts on the game because we've hit a bunch of different places here. Offense for Michigan, defense for Michigan, score prediction. On offense for Michigan, I think Ohio State's defense is as advertised. Like I will admit, I will continue to harp on, but who have they played though and all that stuff. You can be very good and be very untested. I think they're untested. I think they're very good. This is a tough ask for Michigan. I think Michigan's play calling and dual threat nature forces the defense to be honest. I do think that helps a young offensive line hold up better than expected. I also expect Ohio State to get to Bryce a couple times. I don't think that's crazy. I think Ohio State probably forces an early turnover in this game. I think Bryce gets really hyped up, right? Like first start in the game, kid from Michigan. I think he probably, he throws one of those balls like he threw against Maryland. I don't know if it goes for a pick six, but I think he turns it over early and then kind of settles in a little bit. The Michigan run game, I don't think can just slam into the wall. I think that's why emerging as this two-dimensional beast is going to matter a lot. I think Ohio State's defense is probably not used to this year being on the field for these long drives. I think this is not rocket science. That's where Michigan can start to expose the defense. If you get them gassed, you get them tired. They've not had to face that over extended periods of time. On defense for Michigan, I mean, listen, Ohio State's got to get their running backs involved in the perimeter. They're going to get their pound of flesh. I keep using that analogy, but that's truly what I think. Michigan's bend don't break is good. Ohio State will get their deep shots. They're going to have 2-3 passes for 35, 40 yards. They're going to get theirs. The question is, can Michigan keep things in front of them, whether receivers are healthy or not? Can they do enough to keep most things in front of them? I think they probably can. However, this Ohio State wide receiver room is really good. At the end of the day, here's the beautiful thing about the game. None of what we've talked about for the last hour matters.
Facts.
I have watched Ohio State have really good wide receiver rooms for 4 or 5 years now. And I've watched Michigan, including last year, have defenses that I went, man, I don't know if we can hang with them, and have consistently done that. I think the number one thing that sits here, in addition to things like discipline, in addition to home field advantage, which does matter in this game, it gets hard to communicate, gets hard to hear. You've got people all these intangibles matter in this game. I think it's wise that Ryan Day is treating this game like any other game. But he obviously knows, the players obviously know. But I think when the crowd gets loud and adversity comes, I think some of the old ghosts start to show up for Ryan Day. Michigan's not going to win a shootout against them. I think Michigan is able to do offensively and defensively just enough to get this win. I'm going to take Michigan. I will take Michigan 23. I will take Ohio State 21 in a game that will take 27 years off my life. My biggest question in this game, Michigan 23, Ohio State 21, is will Ohio State Twitter post the final score this time? Because they still haven't posted it from 23. The Rivalry Podcast is part of the Varsity Network from Learfield and the River Podcast Network from River Radio Ministries.
New episodes out every Monday.
Be sure to subscribe, rate, and review wherever you're listening right now, and follow on social media at RivalPod and RivalPod.com.
And if you like what you hear, share with a friend so they can listen too.